Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast. Right along with Sports Radio 610, Shaun Bijani. And if you're new to the show, welcome aboard. 45 years of journalism between the two of us, over 35, covering sports in the H. If you're a long timer, you know I normally don't sound like this. My jaw still very frozen after some surgery, but we got some good stuff to talk about. Astros and Texans. And Shaw, the Astros, they've lost 6 of their last 8 games. They're missing 3 of their top 5 starting pitchers. Yordan's out indefinitely. They're 5 games back of the Rangers right now. Would you bet your house on a division title or wild card knowing all this information?
There's not going to be a 2023 playoffs without the Astros. So I may not be that confident in saying that they're going to win the division right now, because I don't feel like for a long time now, up until really this past week, people have been giving the Rangers the respect that they deserve. They very well could win this division, but the Astros are going to make the playoffs. I'm pretty confident of that. I know what's going on up in the AL East. Every darn team up there is legit, playing some good baseball. There's not one stinker amongst them. And who would have thunk it, after so many years? I can't even recall last. I mean, I guess you have to look back to maybe the early to mid 90s when the Baltimore Orioles were regarded as like, hey, this is a legit looking ball club finally. You'd have to go back maybe to the Rafael Palmeiro days and to the Miguel Tejada days in Baltimore. But I feel safe to say that, yeah, the Astros are going to cinch up one of those wild card spots at the very least.
Well, they're third in the AL in run differential, only behind the Rangers and the Rays. They lead all of baseball in ERA. That's the good news, Shaun. The bad news is they're 14th in runs scored as we record this on Monday night. So it's about the offense at this point, and we know it.
It is. The pitching is kind of been the silver lining all season long. I mean, and who would have thunk that? With what you open the show with, no Garcia or Urquidy out, no McCullers. He may never come back this season. Who knows? The Astros are certainly going to be looking to see who's available out there to see if they can bolster their pitching staff. I have to believe, because you never have enough. That's just it. You never have enough. I mean, can they continue to overcompensate, for the lack of offense? I don't think they'll need to be quite honest with you. I mean, I was just sitting back, today, no game, off day, first time in, nearly 3 weeks. I've really had a chance to sit back and think about this team. And as many struggles, with injury as they have had to this point, guys starting slow, just not performing up to their capability, to their track record, I'm still not freaking out about this ball club. And maybe it's because of everything that's happened over the course of the last 6 years. I think it's probably that. But I also think it's what I've been, talking about all season long. Maybe it sounds like I've been beating a dead horse, but these guys are who they are. We know them, Bregmans of the world, Tuckers of the world, Altuve and Yordan. We have expectations, and while they might not have all have met them to this point in the season, I'm not anticipating a steep drop off by any one of them this season. I'm looking for Altuve to get healthy and get in a rhythm, Bregman to continue to start balling and find more consistency, Tucker to earn that massive contract that he wants one day. Yordan, I expect him to be injured, every once in a while. He's not an Iron Man, but if the guy can give me 125, 135 ball games in a season, I'm happy. I think the offense will improve. I think the pitching has been the silver lining. I think it will continue to be the strength of this ball club until the offense gets going, and it will get going. It's too talent rich not to.
I'm going to ask you something, and this is for everybody watching and listening. If you're on YouTube, give us a comment on this. But without Yordan in the lineup, Jake Myers likely playing center field pretty much every day, and that leaves 2 of these 4 hitters that could be in the lineup. Shaun, which of these 2 do you want to see play the most? Chas McCormick, Corey Julks, Mauricio Dubon, or Yadier Diaz? Pick 2 of those 4 that you want to see get the most at-bats without Yordan.
I'd have to go off the top of my head, and maybe we could talk through this a little bit more, because I know you can make some really good points for all 4 seeing time. I think it's important because they all bring something different to the table. But I'll say Dubon because of the nature in which he's been getting on base, the defense, whether it be at second base or the outfield, I just know the guy's going to ball for you. And then I'll say Corey Julks. And I didn't think I would say that at any point in time this year. I thought he'd be a nice complimentary piece. I knew he had some game, but this guy almost has, not just surpassed, but I mean, he fits in. Like he's doing what he's meant to do. The guy's a ball player. And I think he's figured that out now. And I think the Astros have figured that out. Like, this guy's a player for us, for a World Series championship contending team. That's how they view themselves this year, as they should. And that's how Julks is playing, like he could be a series contributor. I mean, I know what Chaz gives you on a regular basis. There's no doubt about that. There's not a real reason at this point in time, and you can unfortunately, tip your cap to Jose Abreu for that and Yordan Alvarez for his most recent injury. There's a way that you could effectively get the very best out of at least 3 of the 4 of those guys without playing them out of position in any circumstance. We've seen Corey Julks DH earlier on this season within the first 10, 15 ball games. That's a spot that he could maintain. Diaz could play first base as you look to kind of fade Jose Abreu out. I know over the course of the last few games, he's hitting a little bit better, had back-to-back home run days. Fine. I'm going to give him every opportunity to see if he can get that going. But if he doesn't, you know what you have on your bench. But at the same time, dude, I mean, it goes back to your question, which one of those 4? A gun to my head, I got to go Julks and Dubon. I mean, I feel like those 2 guys in the lineup any given point give you the best chance to win.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's unfortunate that all 4 of those guys, and we're talking basically left field and DH, that's where Yordan plays. All 4 of those guys hit from the right side of the plate. So, you could be, doing lefty righty, but you can't do that because of that. Yeah. And of course, Yader Diaz is going to be doing some work as catcher, so he's going to be in the lineup there sometimes. But my feeling is the guy that's got to get plate appearances is Mauricio Dubon because, their OPSs are all pretty similar. Yeah. But I would say this, Sean, Mauricio Dubon has hit for more average than any of these guys, and maybe we're destined to see that drop. But when all the OPSs are the same, I go with average because average means that you're getting base hits. And if there's guys on base, then that means you're knocking in runs.
Or you're setting the table. I like how Dubon's been leading off, Altuve second. I know it hasn't yielded wins, yet, but there's a lot of other things at play with this ball club versus, just how Dusty's making out the lineup card. I mean, you saw the battle that it was, the last couple of games on the mound for these pitchers in a crazy 10-9 ball game in Cleveland the other day. And then, you lose a close one and, the bullpen's got to come together. Look, it's kind of the same story that we've been talking about all season long. And they had a really good stretch, a good 3-4 week stretch of playing some really solid baseball where they all kind of started to seem to come together. They were inching up on the Rangers, got within, a couple of games, maybe a game and a half, I think at its best here recently. Now it's 5. I just think that these guys will come together again, and there's going to be a sticking point. And who that is it Altuve, hey, it's definitive, like this dude's back, or Yordan comes back with a flourish, or Bregman just takes his game to another level, or, Hunter Brown just continues to emerge and, takes another step. I don't know what it is, but something will happen. This ball club's too good. You know what? Maybe at the end of the day, and you're still inside of 2 months before the deadline come August 1st, but maybe it's a Dana Brown move. Maybe he gets a guy in here that, is that versatile left-handed bat that he's, seemingly coveting right now. Maybe it's a first baseman type. I don't know. Whoever it is, though, that could be the guy that binds it all together, kind of reminiscent of 2017 when the Astros, they needed that extra dude on the mound. And Jim Crane made it happen, went out and got Justin Verlander, and the rest has been history. We'll see what happens this year if Dana Brown's, talk of aggressiveness, lends itself to actually walking the walk. But it may take that. I just don't think the Astros really are in that desperate of a need right now. I know what the standings say, but I also know what this ball club's capable of. And I also know what they've done to this point. They're 37-29. They're 5 games behind the Rangers, who have been playing stupid baseball. But you get in the mix, you stay in the mix. This is a darn good ball club. And at the end of the day, I trust the talent that's already on it.
Yeah, I keep hearing people talk about all these trades that the Astros need to make. They need to get a first baseman and a starting pitcher. And I keep going back to the fact that I don't know what they've got to trade. Their minor league system is not great right now. And there's not a lot of guys that have stepped up this year and have really gone, oh my God, this guy's going to be somebody that we can either bring up or we can use in a trade. And that's my concern, Shaun, is everybody's talking about, well, Dana Brown's got to do something, but you got to have stuff to do it with.
Just trying to think it through. I mean, this is something you really need to put down on paper and have a good, lengthy discussion about. But for years, Robert, when we're talking about adding a piece, right? Whether it be in the bullpen or a starting pitcher or another hitter, it's always easy to say, we don't want to touch what we got, in the dugout every day. We don't want to touch what we're trotting out there on the field of 9 every single day. But you know what? Sometimes you might have to look there. And where's there the biggest log jam right now with talent, right? And it's kind of funny because Michael Brantley might not as well even been being wearing an Astros uniform right now.
Well, if you're going to say the log jam's in the outfield, if you got, why is somebody going to give you a hitter for outfielders that that you think aren't deserving to be in the lineup anyway? I mean,
I'm getting there.
To me, like, okay, outfielders don't bring you back elite guys.
I'm getting there. It's not going to be a 1v1, but maybe that's the straw that stirs the drink, if you will. And maybe there's a scenario out there where you see a team that has got kind of like the Astros do, but a lot closer to their contract ending at first base with the Astros. They're paying Abreu nearly $20 million a year for the next 3 years. Maybe they got somebody in the outfield position, a corner spot, maybe center field spot, whatever, that they feel like, you know what, like we're going to offload this guy and we're going to retool next year. This ball club needs a better hitter. They need somebody that can play first base as well. We'll go ahead and take maybe a future left fielder for us, if it's a Julks, if it's a McCormick, or center field position, whatever the case may be, if Myers is a guy. And maybe you do sweeten it with a couple of minor leaguers. Certainly, we do know this. The Astros maybe aren't littering the top 100 in Baseball America's rankings, but they've got some talent, in the farm system, whether you believe it or not. I mean, we're seeing it come to fruition right now this season, right before our eyes. Maybe that's a way that you get that extra bat. I don't know. All I'm telling you is however creative Dana Brown maybe needs to get, it might come via somebody that you're regularly seeing trot out every day, every other day in this lineup already. That might be what it takes. You can't just say, here's a boatload of minor leaguers. Let's get the guy that we need. At some point, it might be that point this season where the Astros just don't have enough in their arsenal to do that.
Yeah, and that's fine. If he could do it with these guys, I don't mind giving up these guys, but yeah, that's fine. One other thing with the Astros that I heard this morning on 97.5, Ryan Presley was asked what makes Martin Maldonado so great, because I think Astros fans, and this, Shaun, they get confused. Why is he out there all the time? We need to see more Diaz or whoever.
Yeah.
And Ryan Presley said, quote, "We'll be on the plane and literally the entire plane is dark, but one light is on. He's got a computer on one side, another laptop on the other side. His notes right in front of him." We're talking about Martin Maldonado, as Presley's talking about. And then he said, it's not just that, but he can read your swing behind the plate and change the entire scouting report just like that. There are things he can see, but we can't, Shaun.
It's fantastic. And that's the that's a level of value that you can't put a number to. There's no advanced analytic that you could say, hey, this is what he brings. And I'll kind of dumb it down to this, and it's not just this, but I've thought about this for the last couple of years with Maldonado, especially and even he knows this. If he's a guy that's not going to be able to regularly contribute at the plate offensively, you have to do everything in your power to be the very best at that one thing. What is that one thing for Martin Maldonado? Saying that, he's a great handler, the pitching staff isn't enough. For a guy, in my opinion, that has, coaching, managing in his future, I've seen him. We've watched him, kind of be in that role this season when he takes it upon himself, to say, hey, pitching coach, stay there. Manager, stay there. I don't need you to come out. I'm going to talk to the pitcher. I'm going to talk to the infield. I'm going to give the situation. I'm going to tell them what's going on, what the scouting report is, what I've witnessed, what I've studied. I think we've seen that. And whatever those conversations have been or are or will be on the mound, that is that added value that only a Martin Maldonado can bring. If you're going to not deliver in one aspect of the game, then you better over deliver in the other. And I think he's certainly done that. But I think this is something that he needs to do. He knows he has to do it, but he also has a gift where he's able to see things and understand things and pick up on things that the coaching staff or analytics department just simply may not. And I think that's huge. That is the value of a Martin Maldonado.
Yeah, and we were talking about a little bit with Steven last week, Maldonado versus Diaz and that sort of thing. One thing that I think I failed to mention is, Dusty's always playing the long game. He likes to rest guys. We saw on Sunday, he trotted out a spring training lineup because they had a day off coming up and it had been a long stretch. And I get all that. But what I would say to Dusty is, if you're playing the long game, you need to rest Maldonado longer because the guy's like mid-30s. What is he, 35, 36 now? And there's no point in running him out there 120 games a season if you're resting him 4 out of 5 days. Maybe back it off a little bit. Get it down to where he's more on a pace for 90 or 100 if you truly believe this is a playoff team. Do you think Maldonado is going to make that much of a difference if he's out of the lineup, maybe 20 more games or something like that? That's my question, because like we said last week, we didn't see it in the ERA, but just, if you want to win in the playoffs, it doesn't matter if Maldonado is your best bet in the regular season. If he's not got the legs in the playoffs, then you're sunk anyway.
Understood. I think if I'm Dusty, I'm looking at the situation that it's been with your starting staff with the JP France, a Brandon Bielak, and a young pitcher in Hunter Brown. And there's a guy in Martin Maldonado that you want out there more times than not, behind the plate for those guys, going out there and talking to those guys, just working through a game. Because at this point in time, you're going to need all of those guys to get to where you want to get to again this year. Look, it is early still, relatively speaking. I know a lot of people are getting a little nervous looking at the, standings and the box score here recently, but you're 5 games behind the Rangers right now, and they know that. And you can't let that get away from you because, there's some other really good ball clubs over there in the AL East that we've been talking about. And, one quite honestly behind you, and the Angels, which, a week and a half ago, they were 4 or 5 ball games behind you. And now they're a game and a half out of second place in your division. So, this thing is going to go just like this until the Astros kind of figure things out, get some key guys healthy and producing at the same time, coming together, playing championship baseball like we've seen over the last 6 years. And if you're Dusty Baker, you got to weigh things, because what he knows now, at least right now, is that, Diaz could be a contributor. Okay. In terms of his bat, we can stick him at first base if need be, but where's he at in terms of comfortability and having a Diaz out there handling a younger staff versus a Maldonado? And I think that's what Dusty, an old school manager, is weighing, a guy that is a real people person, a player's coach, is trying to find that balance. And you know what? It might hurt a little bit right now, but you know what? I'll liken it to this. Who's that Stanford kid last night who threw 156 pitches on the mound in like a 5-run ball game, right? In complete game. And the last time any major leaguer's thrown 156 pitches in a game was 2005. Okay. And I bring that up to say this is, there's sometimes a guy that understands he's reached a limit and will bow to the manager, understand that, hey, it's best for the team that he come out. I don't think Maldonado is one of those guys either. I think he knows the value that he brings, like we just talked about, and understands that I got to grit it out right now. As much as this may suck, as much as it may hurt, and we know the guy can play through injury, just i.e. last postseason with the sports hernia and all the crap that he was going through. Team needs me right now. I may not be bringing it at the plate, but I'm going to bring it in other areas.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's
There's
the season.
not a question as far as Maldonado and whether he wants to play hurt or whether he wants to play. This is about Dusty and his decision. And look, you talk about the playoffs. They've added all these teams now to where
Mhm.
you said the Angels. That's the only thing you should matter is second place because you're getting into the playoffs if you're the second team in the AL West. No matter the way that it's set up right now, you get it as a second team, and that's the team you got to worry about fighting off at the moment. You don't
Mhm.
worry about anybody else in the American League. You worry about the second place team and the second and third place teams in the AL West. You got to be the second place team.
Right. Right. And they're a game and a half out right now. That's exactly who you have to worry about. And you've got a long homestand coming up, 9 games. You got the Nats, you got the Reds, you got the Mets coming in, and you have an opportunity to play some of your best ball after a long stretch of no days off. You get a couple of guys a break, for your regular starters. I mean, this is a huge time. It's a huge time. They've got to play some of their best ball of the season, and they have to do it at home right now to create a little bit of a buffer. And it's a great time to do it because just around the corner, you got another little break coming up, the All-Star break, which, I mean, who knows what that could mean for the Houston Astros? I mean, nobody's holding their breath, Robert, but there is a lot of reason to be excited, intrigued about, the next month plus because of what Dana Brown maybe does ahead of the trade deadline, because
Yeah, yeah.
maybe Lance McCullers does surprise us and, come back
No,
and offer
no,
something.
no,
I don't
no,
know.
no,
Maybe
no,
Michael
no.
Brantley does offer something.
No,
Let's see how a
no.
Jose Urquidy comes back and pitches, off of his rehab. Luis Garcia's not coming back, but there's also, room for improvement for guys that, hey, look, we're familiar with. We know what they're capable of. Montero's got to be better. Stanik's got to be better. We've seen Presley blow a couple of close games here over the course of the last month. I'm sure there's some things that he needs to tighten up and work on. And so you get through this little hump, but you get your guys to carry you that you expect to carry you when a Yordan's out, when you're short-staffed. And those are your Bregmans, those are your Tuckers, those are your Altuves. I mean, you've been getting contributions all season long from McCormick and Julks and Dubon, things that are not expected in Diaz. Those guys are pulling their weight. They can only do so much. It's time for that star power to kind of show through now and get the job done between now and the All-Star break.
Yeah, I'm just looking around here trying to figure out where I could get that stuff you're smoking that McCullers and Brantley is going to be back. But we got to talk about the guy over my shoulder right now.
Until the nail is in the coffin. I mean, I'm going to remain
Yeah,
positive.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
gotta
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about it
Whatever. I
indefinitely.
know you will, Sean. I'm just telling you, like, don't hold your breath on that.
I'm not
We got to
being real.
talk about forget all that. We got to talk about the guy over my shoulder because they announced they're putting JJ Watt in the Ring of Honor October 1st when they play the Steelers. And
Yeah.
it's very cool that his brother TJ is going to be there for the big day. I guess that's the story coming out today.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't have picked a better game to do it, right?
Oh
TJ is
yeah.
going to be on the other sideline looking at this happen in front of him, with all the fanfare. I was just thinking about this earlier. It's probably going to be the most raucous environment at NRG since the Bills Texans wild card playoff game in 2020. Probably, right? I mean, not even opening day of, the 2020 season because you'd offloaded DeAndre Hopkins. Fans were pissed off at that situation. And you kind of saw it, unfolding before your eyes, the 4-12 season. But it's going to be a great day at NRG, man, against the Steelers. TJ is going to be there. And I started thinking about this. Obviously, it's well deserved. I mean, we could talk about JJ Watt accolades all day, but I mean, we're not going to say anything that hadn't already been said. Who's the next Texan that should go in after JJ Watt? That's a question I heard somebody ask earlier today, and I'm like, that question shouldn't even exist.
Well,
There's
the better question, the one I wanted to ask you is, will we see any Texans who played it down since their very first game in existence get in the Ring of Honor, or is the next person who gets in not even played a game for the Texans yet?
I won't go that far. I think the next guy that gets in was likely drafted within the last 2 years. So it's pretty close to what you just said. And obviously, I'm looking at a Jalen Petrie, a Derek Stingley, a Will Anderson, a CJ Stroud. those are my top four. If I had to give you five, I mean, it's like pulling teeth. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, look, your obvious ones, like for guys that are maybe most deserving, but maybe not deserving to be in a Ring of Honor, much less the Texans Ring of Honor, like Jonathan Joseph, Arian Foster. Like if those guys were going to go in after JJ Watt, like I feel like they probably should have been in already anyway. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like Arian's been done. Jonathan Joseph has been done. They've had the opportunity to do that. I just think a key part of it is for any Ring of Honor, for any sort of honor respective to a sport, you don't obviously have to finish your career as, a member of that franchise, but everything that you did that was the most impactful to your sport, that was the most meaningful, had to have come in that uniform. And longevity has a lot to do with that. And JJ Watt obviously did, all of those things with the Defensive Player of the Year awards, all the accolades. He did it as a Houston Texan. And sure, he finished a really good season for him, for a really bad team in the Arizona Cardinals. But he deserves the Ring of Honor. I mean, you could have put him in 5 years ago and people would have been good with that for the Texans. But Arian Foster, Jonathan Joseph, I just don't see it happening. I don't think they're really deserving, to be quite honest with you. Good players, but just not Ring of Honor players, not Hall of Fame players, if you will. I think the next guys were drafted in the last couple of years for the Texans, if that.
All right, let's talk about a guy that's been drafted in the last 2 or 3 years. Great observation from USA Today's Texans analyst John Crumpler, is a friend of the show. He said Nico Collins mentioned that Bobby Slowik has him watching Julio Jones clips from Atlanta as a similar receiver style comparison for the scheme that the Texans are running. And under Slowik's old boss, Kyle Shanahan, Julio Jones in 2016, Sean, had 83 receptions, 1,409 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's pretty, I mean, maybe they think he could be Julio Jones, who knows? I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's going to be that good, but similar maybe.
I mean, this is not uncommon. I mean, coaches have you look at guys that you think you have similar skill sets to, or, what you could aspire to be athletically in the minds of, your coaches. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it happens all the time. I was there when Slowik, when Nico rather said that. I forget what pointed question he was asked that even brought that up, but I was there for that last week. And I didn't bat an eye at it. I was like, good. You should be watching guys that have been there, done that. I don't care necessarily about body type, all of that stuff. I care about the will for you to just be better. And Nico Collins didn't answer a darn question in his media availability. There was no substance to it. The guy's just got his head down. He's focused. He understands that he has to be better, that he wants to be better. That, to me, is what came through in that availability. There wasn't much you could write about it. It was just a guy up there that there ain't nothing to talk about yet, because there ain't nothing to talk about yet. He ain't done it. But he's excited that he has a quarterback to throw him some balls this year to where he can maybe reach his full potential.
Let me ask you, how much of Nico Collins not doing it yet has to do with Davis Mills, and how much of it has to do with Nico Collins? If you could put a percentage on which part, is it 40% Davis Mills and 60% Nico Collins? What do you think?
I think 60-40 is probably fair. If you wanted to go 65-35, Davis Mills, being the majority favorite, not just Mills. I think system, I think situation, it doesn't just come down to a quarterback. I mean, we're talking about how revamped this offensive line is, right? That has had a lot to do with the lack of success from the Texans offensively. For a quarterback, the lack of talent in the receiver core as a whole, the system in which they are running, okay, all of it works together. It's just been a horrible situation. And you and I have talked about this before, Robert, specifically more so with the Rockets than the Texans, but we've talked about this too, is that when you're at a point in time with these organizations that aren't trying to be good, they're not trying to win, But the coaches out there on the field that are busting their butt, 12, 14, 15-hour days, whatever it is, they're trying to get better. They're trying to win. They're trying to do their best. But it just doesn't jive. It doesn't mesh well with the overall roster, with the overall objective. There's not one goal. There's not one culture. There's a lot of me's and there's a lot of I's in there. Now you've got an established culture. This is the what an NFL organization is supposed to look like, sound like, feel like. It's how they're vibing, and I think Nico's ready for that. It's a team that's turned the page, and so now you get a chance to see kind of like what Nico Collins and a lot of these guys that you've hung on to over the course of the last 3 years, 4 years in some cases, like what they're really made of. Who they really are as players that are around a winning culture, a good system, good coaching, better players. And my gosh, there are a lot of better players in that locker room right now. I think you're going to see it. People talking about over under 5.5 wins this year for the Texans. I know you and I always kind of look at each other and say, you know what? Vegas knows. Vegas knows. Well, I don't know what the hell they know right now, but I feel like I know that this is a much improved roster right now. And you're going to see some things for some guys this year that are highly unexpected because of the brainwashing that you thought you knew XYZ about, these players in years past. They're going to surprise you. I think Nico could be one of them.
Mini camp this week. Any thoughts going into mini camp? Any Texans stuff that you're looking out for as we head into mini camp?
Yeah, just it's mandatory mini camp, getting bodies in the house. There was a report today by Aaron Wilson, Steven Nelson, the cornerback, who's in the final year of the 2-year, $10 million contract. He's expected to show up to mandatory mini camp, and maybe the Texans work something out with him, whether it be a new deal. Maybe they end up trading him. I don't know what the situation is going to be. I'd certainly like to keep him. I like what he did last year, in the secondary for the Texans. But it's going to be good to see just all of the guys out there. And CJ Stroud just kind of working with the entire team. One of the biggest things that, I think we all noticed being out there in each of the last 3-4 weeks with the OTAs is these practices were run very similarly to how you would see a regular season NFL practice. Very similar to what we saw last year with the Texans under Lovie Smith. Just the overall structure, just boom, boom, boom. I mean, not a lot of downtime, just a lot of movement, not a lot of stoppage and coaching in between, and just a good flow to the practice. I think getting everybody in for mandatory minicamp and running through what you're going to be doing during the regular season is going to be very beneficial for all of your young guys. Obviously, CJ Stroud, see if he takes some more steps, if he gets more reps with the ones. Clearly, we know this right now. Whatever the Texans' plan has been to this point, he's the number 2. What does this next phase of preparation for the regular season mean for CJ Stroud and so many of the young guys? I think we'll have to wait and see, but I think that's what we should all keep an eye on.
Last thing I wanted to hit was Mark Berman. This is his last day, I believe, that he will be covering Houston sports. First time in 43 years on Tuesday that he will not be covering Houston sports. It's been a hell of a run for Mark Berman. In the last year, we've lost him and John McClain, who I
didn't lose John.
Yeah, well, we lost him for the Chronicle. He's sort of retired, but I guess he's not really retired because he's still doing stuff for you guys over at 610. But Mark Berman, it hasn't sounded like he's going to go do something else. He says that this is it for him. What are your thoughts on Berman's retirement?
I don't know. Somebody, I think it was McClain that was talking about him last week. Said, or maybe it was somebody about McClain that made the analogy. I can't remember what it is now, but look, you think it's it, and then you get a phone call. You miss it. You're out of it for a few weeks. You're out of it for a few months. I mean, just think about this. Like, I saw Mark Berman actually last week driving through the parking lot of Michael's. Okay. Like, when does this guy have time to go shopping at Michael's? Granted, could have been Best Buy. I don't know. Maybe he was looking for a new microphone or a new recording device, something like that. I don't know. I'm not judging. Could have been Michael's. Who knows? But but when's the last time you saw him have time? Like, I've noticed a change in Mark, over the course of the last year. Like, he's been a lot nicer, to people around him, more welcoming to people, not necessarily me. I don't know what he has against me, but whatever. I just keep my head down and I plow. But he's a good dude. People respect him. People love him. You saw the tributes on social media and stuff like that today. He doesn't, strike me as a type of like, I'm going to, stay away for weeks or months and then come back and do something. I mean, I think he's done. I think he's riding off into the sunset. I think he's going to spend time with his family, take care of his rabbits, I think is what he's into now. So that's Berman for you. And I think he's going to enjoy it. Maybe every once in a while you might hear him, as a guest on somebody's radio show, but I don't think that's anytime soon.
I think what made Berman so special, and really it's like he's a dying breed. And I don't even know if the breed was that alive to begin with, but Mark Berman breaks stories for a local market. And you hear about the Adrian Wojnarowskis or the Sham Charania or, whoever, Adam Schefter. You hear about all those guys, but you don't hear very often of local guys breaking stories. And, nobody works harder than Mark Berman at doing that sort of stuff. And some people say nobody works harder than Mark Berman, because if you know Mark, I don't think he rests. I think it's like he's got the phone by his bedside at night, and if something happens, he's ready to go at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and he just doesn't stop. So it's amazing to me that, Shaun, that he's going to try to quit this cold turkey, because I can't imagine it's like trying to quit smoking cold turkey for Mark.
Yeah, I mean, that's what it feels like. That's a really good analogy. I mean, some sort of addictive substance, right? Like you can't just put it down. Like, what I thought about that. Like, what is it going to be like for him? I thought about it the other day when I saw him driving through the parking lot. I'm like, shouldn't he be like Terminal C or like Toyota Center, NRG, Minute Maid, somewhere? There is some place for you to be right now, Mark, at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Something's happening. Like, get there, my man. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Today's his last day, for a guy like that, a month away, personally could like kill a guy. Publicly, he might be fine. Somebody catches up with him. Hey, do you miss it? Nah, not one bit. I'm ready. Like, I've been planning this. I'm ready to go. He might be on a freaking cruise in Cancun or something by this time a month from now. Who knows? He could use a tan. I know that. But, we'll see. We'll see. All respect to Berman, man. And I don't know how old of a guy he is, but he sure acts young enough. So whatever is in his future is that next phase. It's going to be something special, whether it's for his family, which I know is going to be included in anything he does. But if it's something for the rest of us to enjoy and to take part in, obviously that would be really cool too.
Well, good luck to Mark, and we'll convene again in a few days. We'll have Thursday. We'll talk a little. I'm sure there'll be some more Astro stuff going on, but definitely Texans. You're going to be out there, right? This next couple of days for that.
Yeah. Tomorrow I will not be out there. I'm actually hosting from 10 to 2 with John Lopez on Sports Radio 610, but I'll be out there on Wednesday and then any day forward. If there's Texans on a practice field, I'll be there.
All right, man. Sounds good. We'll talk to you again in a couple of days.
All right, man. Enjoyed it.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.